Back in the 1980s, Nelson-based brewers Terry and Bev McCashin created the beer brand Max, which eventually sold to Lion Nathan. Over 3 decades later, second-generation brewer Dean McCashin, along with his wife Emma, has created a range of ales called Stoke at what is now one of the largest independent craft brewers in the country.
Terry and Bev bought the business when it was a closed-down cider factory back in 1980. At that stage, Dad had a farm over in Picton after many years in the pub trade as a publican, and he was looking for a new, innovative way to farm. Back then, in the mid-70s or late 70s, it was pretty tough, and he went to England to investigate rabbit farming. And while he was there, he visited a few bars and small family-owned breweries. He liked the idea of doing it, so it sort of went from there. Lion and DB had a duopoly back then. All the malt was supplied from a Canterbury malting company, which was 50-50 owned by the 2 big breweries. So they could charge what they liked and restrict what they liked as well. They also owned the glass suppliers in the country then, which was ABC, 50-50, so any other user of those glass bottles had to pay a rental, whatever rates were charged. Of course, the outlets too were owned by Lion and DB back then, the pubs and liquor stores alike, so it was extremely difficult for Dad to, one, get some of the base ingredients for the product, but also a way to retail it. Might have been a bit of ignorance at the start, but a lot of tenacity. I think he did manage to pour the beer through one of the pubs he had retained and leased out to another publican, and also shop sales here at the factory. Lion approached Dad with the thought of acquiring the brands, and after a bit of time of thinking about it, decided probably the timing was right. The growth had started to curve off, and Lion's offer at that stage was probably too good to resist. We retained ownership of the brewery and plant, so became landlords basically for the next 12 years. Emma and I saw an opportunity of taking on the plant. Lion had moved production to Auckland, and the place was mothballed, and it sat there for 2 years, mothballed, and Emma and I decided we'd jump in after a few months thinking about it, and we just felt the opportunity was there to come out into the market with a real beer and get onto the craft wave that's the world really is experiencing at the moment.
My definition of craft is where a brew is made based on flavour as opposed to cost or marketing, packaging or anything like that. It's where the flavour comes first, and that's certainly what we do. I think our beers stand out quite well as in that they are full-flavoured, good malty beers, but easily drinkable. In brewing, your simple conversion of your yeast feeding on your sugar produces alcohol. And with brewing, what we do differently as opposed to wine, where the sugar is readily available in the fruit, with brewing we're using the starches which are in the grain, which have to then be converted into fermentable sugar, so it's a bit of a process. The basic raw products are malt, hops, water of course, and your yeast. This is the malt. It's all from barley. You can get other grains can be malted, but your base for beer is made from barley. And it's been germinated for a few days, which releases the starch starts to become released and the enzymes start to become active. And then at that point they dry it and kiln it to varying degrees. I mean, you can see some of your more roasted ones. And then when it comes to us, we mill it and drop it into some warm water, and at different temperatures, usually in the 60s, the enzymes start to break down the starch into the fermentable sugar. This obviously adds a really nice roasty colour, as well as the flavour. Others produce more sort of nutty or toffee, caramel flavours. Basically, you'll use a base pale malt and then add various coloured malts to it to provide the flavour and colour to it. At various temperatures, the enzymes break down the starches that I mentioned into simple sugars, which the yeast can feed on. We then run it through the lauter tons, which have a false bottom on them, like screen, which separates the grain and what's now sweet, what we call wort. This is just all your sugar, colour, flavour that goes into your beer is in there. That then gets boiled and hops are added, which provide bittering and aromatic flavours and help balance the sweetness of the malt. Then we add the yeast to that. The yeast feeds on the sugars and produces the alcohol. A lot of my ideas just sort of come from visualising. Sometimes I'll come down and I'll actually smell and taste malt and hops, and so you try and visualise because your end flavour is, of course, quite different to what your raw materials are like, but you try and visualise and get an idea of what it will come out like at the end. Other times it may be an idea like you might be trying to emulate a style. You know, if for the likes of making a lager or a pilsner, or you might be trying to do a stout, you're going on a style and trying to recreate it in a way that you think works. The first ones that I started on nearly 2.5 years ago were the gold, the amber and the dark, and they've sort of been like the flagship ones. You've got your 330ml bottles, but then we have these 650, what we call bombers, which is an American colloquial term for the big 650 bottle. They're just a little different, more unique in that they're not confined so much to style. They're more hard-hitting, flavour-wise. I mean, still just as drinkable. They still complement the rest of the range really well.
The McCashin source their hops from local organic and conventional grower Colin Oldham, who's based 45 minutes out of Nelson on New Zealand's most southern hop garden.
We do about 16 to 17 tonne of organic hops and 40 tonne of conventional hops. McCashins take a lot of the hops that I grow on my property, a lot of organic ones, and the variety mix that I grow seem to suit what McCashins are brewing here. They want an organic product to have the cleanest, greenest ingredient they can in their beer. There's a lot of challenges growing organic hops, and the main one would be weed control. We have to use steaming and hand weeding, which is very expensive. And the other one would be fertiliser. Well, we're paying up to 3 times more per tonne for fertiliser than conventional hops. And normally the crop wouldn't be right up there with conventional. There's 17 hop growers left in New Zealand. Back 30 years ago there was 125 hop growers, maybe 40 years ago. And we have a cooperative where the 17 growers supply New Zealand Hops Limited, and we have a CEO there that distributes the hops worldwide and to the local breweries in New Zealand.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.